Um, Welcome to another edition of the Paran Markets online cheese tasting and tutorial. Last year we had Toby Puddock and Chad from Pete and Rosie's hosting it, and this year it's Diana Chan, former MasterChef winner and maker of extraordinary dumplings. And I mean, is there a TV channel that you're not on at the moment?
Yeah, I'm trying to get, well, Channel 7, but I'm trying to get onto that as well. So
Very nice. And I'm Anthony Femia. I'm the owner of Maker Munga there at the Paran Market. We're inside the Harvest Hall. If you're not familiar with us, we're the cheese shop next to the florists, the Mushroom Man and the Ripe Organic shop with the fantastic toasties and 7-meter long cheese counter there. And it's a great to be a part of the history and the tradition of the Paran Market. And I really love watching, I mean, we've been there 6 years now, and it's been fantastic to watch people coming and growing with us, seeing families grow, people meeting people, becoming families, that sort of thing, just to be a part of the fabric of our society and of Stonington Council. It's pretty cool. So welcome to our cheese tasting. We've got 13 cheeses and dips and 1 vegan cheese. So I guess we've got 12 plus 1 this evening.
A bit to go through, haven't we?
Yeah, we've got quite a bit to go through, and I hope you've all unwrapped your cheeses. And what I'd love for you to do is, with the hard cheeses and the blue, just with a flat blade knife, just shave each one before we get to talking to them. And what that does is that just removes the fridge flavor from the cheese. There's no incredibly best way to store cheese. So we always battle oxidization. Cheese never really goes off, it just dries out. So by shaving those hard cheeses and the blues with a flat blade knife after pulling it out of the fridge, we just refresh it and remove any form of oxidization, any form of sweating if it was wrapped in Glad wrap. And that allows us to experience that cheese at almost 100% as if it was freshly cut from the wheel there. And the way we've sort of decided with the flavors tonight, it's all about weight of flavor. So where that cheese hits your palate on the tongue. So that's how you decide on how to make a cheese selection in terms of soft right through to blue. So we've left the dips and the marinated cheeses to the end because the oil and the truffle, etc., that coats your palate and coats your tongue and pretty much makes it hard to taste anything else if you were to do those first. I know tradition, yes.
You know how you said you scrape off the ones on the hard cheese. Do you do the same with the soft?
Softs, you can trim them. So you would cut like a very small, like about a mil off the cheese faces. It's very hard to scrape a soft cheese, so just trimming them off is the best way to get them back to their 100% best there. And then for those of you who bought the wines to go with the cheeses, the Hero Sauvignon Blanc is a very, very beautiful Victorian Sauvignon Blanc. It's not in the same pedigree as what we sort of think now with that sort of standardized version from New Zealand, where it's sort of passion fruit and lollipop flavors. This particular one has incredible sort of mineral notes, stone fruit aromas and flavors, very similar to the French style of Sauvignon Blanc. And that's going to work extremely well with the first 5 cheeses. For those of you who've got the Henty Pinot Noir, also from Victoria, cold climate, very young Pinot. It's all about those beautiful red fruits, very low tannins, very low acid. That's the style of red wine. If you were to do more than 3 cheeses, you would be picking just that sort of mineral-like Sauvignon Blanc, and also that very gentle Pinot Noir. You could do a champagne or a sparkling wine as long as it's not too brute. But anytime you go over more than 3 cheeses and you want just 1 wine, those are the styles there. If you want to do a perfect pairing of cheese and a particular bottle of wine, then go for it. But if you have to drive home or wake up the next day and go to work, 1 bottle of wine amongst 13 cheeses is good enough there. So I guess we begin. Di, what do you reckon?
I think so too.
Alrighty. So that first cheese that you have there, that's a very special cheese for us at Maker and Mungo. We've watched Long Paddock grow from being a plan on a computer screen to being built just last year. It's been an interesting 3-year journey for the ladies at Holy Goat, Alison Lansley, who's the head of Australian Specialty Cheesemakers Association, and a gentleman named Ivan Lasher, who's come over from central France. And so Ivan's known as the cheese ninja across the world, as he's helped to create and also help modify some of the best cheeses that we know in the New World, including a lot of the range that Neal's Yard Dairy in London at the Borough Markets supply, Jasper Hill Farm there in Vermont in America. He helped create a lot of their recipes of cheeses, and he's come out here and based himself here in Castlemaine in central Victoria at the mill. If you do get a chance to do a day trip here in Victoria, do go up to the mill. It's about an hour and a half north of Melbourne. And there you've got this incredible bakery, you've got a beautiful winery, a chocolatier, you've got fruit and veg that's organic from around the corner. And of course, you've got Long Paddock and their cheeses there, and you've got the botanical gardens across the road. And it's in a beautiful weekend there that you can do. So that first cheese there is what we call the silver wattle. And silver wattle is a lactic set cheese. And by being a lactic set cheese, the milk is left for 12 hours to 18 hours at a temperature of about 18 degrees to naturally culture and coagulate. And with this cheese, you'll never get a rind forming on it. It's always going to be a very soft, delicate texture. It's got a tropical fruit aroma from the Geotrichum candium that grows on the cheese. So that's a yeast-borne mold. So it has those sort of aromas of yeast to it. And the texture's never going to fully break down because those gentle Geotrichum molds, which you can definitely see on goat's cheeses that have that wrinkly rind, they never fully ripen the curd. They always just ripen the edges of the cheese. So they leave the heart of the cheese as if it was a pure curd. And a great cheese or a great cheesemaker will want to highlight the quality of their milk when making this cheese. If you're drawing your milk from all around the country and your cows, etc., you are eating silage, you'll never be able to make these cheeses because you can't hide the inefficiencies of your milk. But when you have a high quality single herd source of organic milk, like they do at Long Paddock, it's beautiful. And this cheese should all be about the front of the palate. You should have hints of citrus notes. It should be a little bit on the sides, and then just a hint of bitterness in the back of the palate. And it's a great cheese to start any meal. You can have it for breakfast as well. You can have it for brunch, before lunch, before dinner. It's just a fantastic cheese to get the palate going. It delivers saliva, hint of salt, and the style of wine you're having precedes whatever you're having for dinner there.
I think it's really, it's got a really nice tang, and it's also quite a nice one to have with maybe some honey, would you reckon? Like something.
Yeah, 100%. Honey, fresh honeycomb.
Citrus, good for desserts, possibly.
Yeah. We enjoy pairing this with the 4 Pillars, the breakfast Negroni marmalade that we have at the shop. That hint of tartness really complements well that cheese there. And you'll find the more you talk while we're eating this cheese, how much saliva it's developed. So it's that you wouldn't have it after dinner. It's more that pre-dinner to get that palate going. And
yeah, right.
The more and more you chew on this cheese, the more and more it's like fudge, where it just coats the tongue absolutely perfectly. And that's where you have that sort of Sauvignon Blanc style there. Or you can even do a Chardonnay with it, or a gentle sparkling, just to clear that film of the cheese off your tongue to keep eating and keep enjoying that.
What's the maturation period of this cheese?
This cheese, it ranges anywhere from 3 weeks to 6 weeks. You wouldn't do any more than that, or else the rind becomes a little bit too slimy and you lose that initial front sweetness and gain a lot of bitterness in the back of the palate there. So a great cheese coming up to Spring Carnival. There.
It's cider, do you reckon?
Yeah, 100%. As long as it's not too dry and not too sweet, like that Swedish cordial stuff that we all used to enjoy when we were growing up and going to the clubs. I don't know about you, but yeah, I couldn't do beer. It was more the mixed drinks and cider. But anyway, let's not digress about that. So the next cheese that we have is the Goat's Camembert from Millewa. So Millewa is one of the oldest cheesemakers here in Victoria. They're right up north there up in the King Country, and their Camembert there has a beautiful mushroomy rind. You can see that it's quite pale on the inside, and that's because goat's milk, when goats eat grass, they don't digest their keratin, so they'll never be yellow like a cow's milk cheese. Will always be that pure white. Right. And this cheese here, you know, has that very clean aroma of the penicillin candium, which is what cheesemakers use over here to grow white mold. It originally derived from mushrooms. So when you have this cheese, you should always get that clean flavor of the goat's milk, hint of that sort of lactic sweetness.
Very earthy.
And that's the rind. That's the rind there. It's quite lactic and sweet through the middle of the palate. It just needs a little bit more maturation, that cheese there, just to break down that interior a little bit more. It's beautiful the way it is, but if you were to pull that cheese out after dinner, like you would traditionally with normal Camembert, you'd want that to have at least 2 more weeks of maturation. But if you wanted to pull it out before a meal, like that silver Wattle that we just had, that there is absolutely perfect. And the thing you want to avoid with these Australian Camemberts and Bries, if the edges of the cheese are brown and slimy along those edges, you want to avoid those cheeses. That's when they're a little bit overripe, or if they've been wrapped in Glad Wrap a little bit too long and they've sweated and formed those sort of brown marks. Like you can imagine like a dark brown edges there. You know from sight and from memory that that cheese is going to have too much ammonia and too much bitterness, and it's way beyond its window of ripeness there. So that goat Camembert rind is in perfect, absolutely perfect condition there. And Miller, they're doing a great job. Like their other popular cheese, which is incredible in winter, is the King River Gold. You wouldn't really eat that in spring and summer due to how rich its flavors are, unless you enjoy a barbecue and beer. But during winter, it's a very hearty cheese to enjoy with a Pinot Noir, and then follow it up with a duck dish there. So they're a great sort of bastion of cellar doors as well. They're always a great one to visit when heading up north. If you're staying in Beechworth or heading up to the snow, stopping off at Maubier, and then even stopping off at some of the beautiful fortified winemakers there. And the Rutherglen is, you know, a great experience. If you like cycling in spring and summer, get up to those mountains. It's definitely worth a tour.
I love it. I think it's really earthy, and it'll pair well as well in like a salad.
Yeah, 100%.
Beetroot would be a great combination.
Yeah, doing a hazelnut or a walnut.
Like shaven, but
yeah,
if you could shave this would be really nice because it's got that very subtle flavor.
Yeah, you just trim it very lightly, and you just do a little frisee salad, like a little honey. You could do a honey mustard vinaigrette, or you could go the French tradition of a hazelnut or walnut oil vinaigrette with that cheese there. You could toast off the hazelnuts without their husks, and same with the walnut. Put it with that, and it'd be a remarkable pairing. They're absolutely delicious. So. If I do see that on one of your TV shows, just make sure you credit the bold cheesemonger for it. All right, so that's our second cheese. The third cheese is a white mold from Lardisson. So Lardisson, Mathieu is his name. He was originally from the Jura region of France, so the famous region of Comté and Mont d'Or. He came over here and he wanted to make cheeses that represented his upbringing and what he enjoyed growing up. So he didn't want to copy anything, and that's really important for cheesemakers over here, is to realize we can't keep trying to copy our European counterparts. We'll never be able to compete with their tradition, their milk, their soil, their types of cows, which are high in butterfat and protein, their cultures that they use to develop flavor and texture in their cheese. So Mathieu is one of the cheesemakers, just like Miller and just like Lompaddock, that are forging their own path through inspiration of what they loved from Europe. So this is his version of a white mold, or a brie there, and he's got an organic source of milk down there in Geelong. He used to be part of the True Organics Cooperative before going out on his own and building a new facility last year. And that was absolutely the worst time to try and build a dairy because, I mean, we all know what's happened the last 2 years, and it was a lot of tough times for Matthew. And he was very lucky that Calendar Cheese Company, who's the biggest importer here and distributor of cheese in our country, they really looked after him. Like a lot of their cheesemakers, they went unheralded. They didn't celebrate it in the media or anything, but they bought lots of cheese from their cheesemakers. They paid for things that weren't quite right. They gave them financial assistance straight away instead of on credit. And they allowed guys like Matthew to stay afloat and to keep experimenting and developing their cheeses. And that really helped him with developing this petite fleur there. So if we try it, again, the rind, like all Australian white molds, it's going to be quite earthy, quite buttery. You get a slight tang of the interior. And it's one of those all-round enjoyable bries. Like you can have that any time of the day, and you can put that on a table. If you've got a gathering, once we're allowed to, of course, of 10 or more people, you can have that on a party table and know that everyone's going to enjoy it. It's not offensive at all. It doesn't have a strong aroma. It's not going to be overripe. It's just that beautiful standardized brie that a lot of our cheesemakers can make really well. And this one's a great one to cook too. Like doing that good old turkey, cranberry and brie toasty is absolutely fantastic using that style of brie there.
What about in like pasta?
Yeah. If you're doing like a pesto pasta with roast chicken, sun-dried tomatoes, you could slice that brie on top and serve it like.
I would assume this would melt really well as well, wouldn't it?
You could bake it as well. So if you were to put it in a little ramekin there, a couple of pricks in it, little garlic in those little pricks, little splash of white wine. You could do rosemary or thyme and bake it at 150 degrees for about 10 to 15 minutes, just keeping an eye on it to make sure it doesn't collapse. And then serve that with some garlic bread would be absolutely stunning.
Well, I'm having it with this one.
So what you've got there is a beautiful trousseau from the Jura Valley. So very, very gentle red. The Jura is kind of like the rock star of wines. It has been for the last couple of years, where everybody going for Sauvignon, the Vangin, L'Etoile, white wines, and then the Trousseau and Pulsard red wines. And that Trousseau, it's got it's like cherry-like flavors, bright red flavors as well. That would complement that.
It does. Very
really
well,
good. I'd be drinking that too, but by the time we got to that 9th or 10th cheese, I'd probably be slurring. I've been on my best behaviour lately, haven't drunk much. So the holes in the cheese, what that there is, that's just the carbon dioxide sort of bursting in the cheese. So to ripen a cheese, you need to ripen it above 12 degrees. If you ripen it below 12 degrees, lipolysis happens, which is fat breakdown. And when we break down fat in a dairy product, you bring on flavors like rancid, bitterness, bite. Sometimes when you get that spice on your tongue, like when you have an aged Parmesan or a really old cheddar, and you have that real itch on the tongue or the back of the palate, that's lipolysis, that's fat breakdown. But when you ripen it over 12 degrees, you have proteolysis, which is the breakdown of the amino acids and the proteins, which carry all flavor and texture. And sometimes above 12 degrees, what you get is little particles of gases with nowhere to go, and they explode and they pop and they create little fat particles there, like little carbon dioxide holes in the cheese. So it's not a fault in the cheese there. It's just naturally occurring in the molecular makeup of cheese. And the more and more...
Does that happen in the making of or in the maturation?
In the maturation. Yeah, those little bubbles of gas in the little molecular makeup of the DNA of milk, they want to escape somewhere, and when they can't get out of the spider's web, they just go and they pop. Emmental makers, really in France and Switzerland, and then Jarlsberg makers there in Norway, they ripen their cheeses above 16 degrees, and that's very encouraging of carbon dioxides, and they just want to just pop everywhere.
Gouda as well?
Yeah, not so much Gouda. Gouda is more of a pressed one. It's more those Emmentaler and Jarlsbergs, and there's this really cool market in Paris. It's called Rungis, where it's like the wholesale market of the world of cheese, and it's massive. You think of per annum market size, you times that by about 20. That's how big this cheese market is. And there's one vendor there that sells all like rubbish, rejected cheeses, like the John West or the non-John West of cheese. And you can see some Emmentalers that look like car crashes where they've just ripened too quickly. It's been above 20 degrees in the ripening room, and there's these huge holes in it, like almost like grenade explosions. And I'd hate to be that guy who was maturing that cheese, flipping that 80-kilo wheel of Emmentaler only for it to explode in his face. You'd almost have to wear an army helmet when flipping those type of cheeses in those warm environments, because carbon dioxide can be quite dangerous there. So yeah.
What happens to that? Like but it's still fine, right? Like that's just
it's still fine, but visually it's rubbish, and then flavor it's lost. Like Emmentaler is known for its sweetness, and you mature it too quickly and explodes too much with carbon dioxide. Essentially, the carbon dioxide it's like farting in the cheese, so it's going to have that type of effect. It's going to be really bitter and foul, and like sometimes fart aromas in cheese are good, but not when they're like that. So that brings us to the fourth cheese, which doesn't have a fart aroma, which is another one of Mathieu's cheeses from Lardisson. This is called the Marcel. So Marcel is his ode to Saint Marcellin of the southwest of France. So when you go to Lyon, and you go to the Isle de Lyon, and you go to Hervé Mons's fromagerie, you taste a raw milk Saint Marcellin or a raw milk Saint Felicien, and that changes your life because you taste what the cows and goats are grazing. And this is Mathieu's pasteurized version of a Saint Marcellin. And this one, like that first cheese, it's made exactly the same way as that first one, except with cow's milk.
Yeah, it's more yeasty.
More yeasty. You can see it's a little bit older too. So it's 2 weeks older than the first cheese. So you can see that it's actually broken down the edges of the cheese. You get a beautiful bulging cream that happens, but the interior still stays firm. You still get the purity of his curd. So if you were to look at it on a scale of maturation, you've got silver wattle at 3 weeks, and then you've got Marcel at 5 weeks. And that's just the magic of cheese maturation. The rind has developed quite nicely, the yeast-borne geotrichum rind on the Marcel, and it's just started to break down perfectly the outside of the cheese. It's not slippery, it's not slimy, it's been held in great condition. See, when you taste this cheese, you know it's not going to be bitter, you know it's not going to be rancid, it's not going to be ammoniated. You're going to taste the tropical fruit, almost like fermented grape flavors of the geotrichum that he uses, together with the cleanliness of the milk.
It's quite salty, this one. I like it. Tangy, sour and salty, all at once.
So this one works extremely well with fresh grapes. And then when the stone fruits are in season, the Tassie cherries, when they kick in late December, early January, great pairing with that cheese. Grilling white peach on the barbecue, then putting a little bit of drizzle of honey, a couple of little sprigs of fresh thyme, and then serving that cheese with it. That's also a really great cheese plate there.
Oh, really good with figs.
Yeah, but figs have been coming in later and later, so we'll probably get good figs again February, March next year.
Yeah, and it's also a very short period now.
Yeah, very short. Same with tomatoes. Tomatoes
are crap at the moment.
Yeah, and they kick in again January, February. We see the Doncaster.
Smaller tomatoes are actually better than the larger ones.
Yeah, and that cheese with tomato works extremely well. If you can get a ripe tomato and then slow roast it with some soy sauce, sesame seeds, like just a splash of the soy, and the sesame seeds turned down really low, like 100 degrees for about an hour, just to really spike up that umami. Serve that next to the Marcel, and that's a match made in heaven, because you've got the fat flavors of that cheese plus the umami of what you've just created with the sesame, soy, and tomato. And it's like wow.
That's amazing.
Absolutely wow. And then just do a beautiful sake with it, like a Junmai ginger sake that's known for its savoriness. And yeah, it's just like when we were as kids, when we loved Vegemite for its umami flavors, it's like an adult version of Vegemite, the fermented tomato or slow cooked tomato and Marcel cheese there.
Yeah, sounds like
Right. So that brings us to our fifth cheese. We won't skip it because it's vegan. But no, it's an exciting industry. Like the vegan industry is very, very interesting. And there's one particular vegan cheese that has really spiked my interest, and it's from an ex-chef who set up Lume Dining there in South Melbourne, Sean Quaid.
Okay, yeah.
And one of the dishes when he was the owner and head chef there was a cauliflower cheese that would come out in this wicker basket with hay, and you'd open it up and you'd think, wow, there's a camembert there. And then you'd taste it and be like a camembert. But then when you ask them what it was, they tell you it was fermented cauliflower. So he sold Lume and he went overseas to America as he was lucky enough to set up a company called Grounded Foods and attract incredible angel investment. And they were given about $10 million to create a vegan cheese. And it's remarkable watching what he's doing over there. He's got a marinated style of cheese, just like Meredith. And then he's got a camembert that he's derived from cauliflower. So he uses hemp seed and cauliflower for his. And that there, like I love what we do at Maker and Munger and the purity of it. But if that were to ever come back to Melbourne, I'd be very happy to stock that vegan cheese. But unfortunately, we don't have that one. We've got this guy here, which is Dimona Brie. It's a soy-based product. So if you are allergic to soy, do avoid it. I hope I haven't said that too.
It feels like tofu.
The guy's name was Sean Quaid, and it was Grounded Food there for that question there. So yeah, it's got a texture like tofu. Soy, I guess. Vegan cheese in our country is still developing. It's quite hard because things like coconut, tapioca, soy, they don't have the same pH. They don't have the same mineral content as milk. So when they try to use the same cultures that cheesemakers do to ferment their products, it can go really good or it can go really bad. And this cheese has got the texture of brie. But
it tastes like miso a little bit, but very subtle.
Yeah,
like miso.
Look, if I was a vegan, I couldn't have dairy anymore.
Yeah,
that would satisfy. Me quite well.
Some other alternatives like cashews as well.
Cashew is a good one. There's that Botanical Foods that do a lot of those cashew cheese spreads. Yeah. There, but I mean, that one's got a really nice aftertaste. It lingers. It's got a lot of umami, like you said, there from that sort of that fermented flavor. And yeah, it's not bad.
No, it's not bad at all. It's actually really interesting. It's got a lot more umami than I thought it would have.
Yeah. I hope Paulie from Ripe Foods isn't watching tonight because they're our next door neighbour, and I don't want him to leave any mouldy bananas underneath our store tomorrow. But yeah, I'm very happy with that cheese.
Look, I mean, if you were vegan and you had that, you'd be pretty happy with it.
And being a soy-based product, you can definitely flash fry it. You can panko crumb it and fry it and have it like a melted brie. That would be pretty delicious with that cheese.
I wonder how it would go melt it. Would it melt?
Being tofu-based or soy-based, it'd be like...
Would it be more crumbly or would it melt?
No, it would melt. It'd still be elastic in texture, but then once you cut into that sort of crumb rind, it would leak out.
Yeah, definitely quite interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know that at all.
Yeah. Like if that was my desert island cheese, we'd be in very big trouble here right now, I guess. So, yeah. All right.
All right. So that's what we've got to say. Another one from Martin.
And that brings us to the next cheese. So we're now finished with the soft cheeses. So all those soft cheeses, what we know as surface ripened, where they grow a mold on the outside of the cheese or a bacteria, and that slowly ripens the interior of the cheese there. So they use things like penicillin candium, penicillin camembert, geotrichum candium. The penicillin ones are extracted from mushrooms. The geotrichum originated from yeast. And so what they do is they grow a nice film on the outside of the cheese and then slowly grow and then break down the interior. We now move to what we call a semi-hard cheese. This is a smear-ripened or wash-rind semi-hard cheese. So when we say washed rind, what they do is they regularly wash the cheese with a salt solution. It can be anywhere up to 10%. Most cheesemakers will use anywhere between 2 and 5% salt solution. So that's 2% or 5% salt to water content. And the crucial elements to get this right are you need a room that's above 10 degrees and you need a humidity of 90% or more. So you can't have a humidifier and a cold fan. You need an ambient relative humidity. So if you're using, you know, a traditional fan in your fridge and you've got steam coming up, that creates condensation, which is not humidity. So you've got to get your humidity right, because if you get your humidity right above 90%, you have a beautiful microflora of brevi bee linens that grow, that love damp cheeses. And they grow and grow and grow and turn the cheese orange, and they develop that very strong aroma, that sort of fart aroma that we talked about earlier. And they help develop the flavors of the cheese there. So this
Epoisse, isn't it?
What's that, sorry?
Epoisse?
Like Epoisse, yeah. Epoisse is a very, very famous wash rind of France, more the softer style. This guy here is that sort of semi-hard cheese. It's got that sort of elastic-like texture. You can eat the rind. This one's going to be a very bitter rind. So if you enjoy your vermouths, your Canotto, that kind of thing, try the rind. I personally, I wouldn't, of this particular varietal. It's just, it's without being too controversial, it's been wrapped in Glad wrap a little bit too long. So it's created like a little sliminess on the rind. So when you do eat that, it's going to be very granular from the rind, plus it's extremely bitter there. So just eat the interior.
It actually tastes like salted fish.
Nice.
Have you ever had salted fish before?
Only once at your house.
Oh yeah, like bacala.
Yeah, bacala. No, every time Mum cooked bacala, I used to run away. It was the only time I would stay in my room all night and not eat food, was when Mum cooked.
Do you get that?
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
You're scaring me. You're bringing back memories of childhood that I don't want to think about.
But it smells stronger than it tastes.
Yeah, that's it. Like all great cheeses, all great wash rinds, they're not for the uninitiated. If you can get beyond that aroma and taste the cheese, it's phenomenal. Like Epoisse that you talked about earlier, that smell of that cheese can scare 99% of the people. Get beyond that aroma, taste it, and it's sweet, it's bacony, it's really umami. This cheese here, it has all the notes of a typical washed, very big wash rind from the Alsatian region or the Alsace of France, where it's Munster inspired, or the German, like Limburger. This is very similar to Limburger.
Yeah, there's a question there. Samuel saying that he's got a dark vein through it. So do I.
Yeah, so that's an ash vein. So Matthew, yeah, I'll be very honest. So this particular batch of this cheese isn't representative of what he's trying to achieve. So Femia is his representation of Maubier, which is a very famous cheese in France, which would used to use evening milk, let that set. They'd put ash on it in the morning, and then the fresh morning milk. And then they would mature that cheese. And it's a very beautiful semi-hard cheese. If you ever get to France, ask for Maubier. The Maubier that's over here at the moment, when you see it, it's an industrial version because it's pasteurized. We can't get the raw milk version. Matthew's trying to create that cheese, but this particular batch of it, it's more of a wash rind than a Maubier style. So it's great in its own right of being that style of big wash rind like a Limburger in Germany. It's not off by all means. He just hasn't hit the target for what he's trying to achieve with that Maubier. And a big part of that is changing his facility last year from moving from that True Organics cooperative because they kicked him out when there was that big boom with powdered milk to China, and all those prices, like the Bellamy brothers, for example, in Tassie, when their stock price went up, True Organics thought, all right, we don't want to make local cheeses anymore. We don't want to do local butter. We want to make powdered milk. So they kicked Matthew out. They kicked a couple other things out, and they turned that whole facility into organic powdered milk. And then unfortunately, he spent last year trying to regather himself, build a new dairy there in Geelong, get a new source of organic milk. So his Femia is about a year away from being what he wants it to be. But this version of it, it's a great wash rind. If you love Limburger or Munster style of wash rinds, like those big, big ones, and you need something of that varietal of wine from Germany, like an Alsatian Riesling that's not too sweet, but a hint of mineral notes to cut through that strength of that cheese there. Beautiful. All right. So number 7, Banksia. Banksia is from Long Paddock again. So like that first cheese, Banksia is their version of a Alpine style of cheese. And what I want you to do with this guy, after you've shaved it, I want you to just break it and smell that broken part of the cheese there. And when you smell that broken part, you smell the sweetness, you smell the beautiful nutty notes of the cheese. And this is a fantastic representation of an Alpine style of cheese being made in our country. This is the perfect grating cheese, perfect melting cheese. If you want to do local, it's up there with Comte in terms of how well it melts. It's and provolone, yep.
It's like a tasty, very tasty cheese.
Very tasty cheese. It's all about front, sides, and middle of your palate. There's no bitterness. There's no sharp flavors. It's just incredible, incredible flavors there. It's Moorish as well. Moorish is where you enjoy it so much you keep eating it.
You have this with a nice glass of Shardy, would you?
You can go with a variety of wines, being that sort of Comte style of recipe, that Alpine. You can go from sparkling right through to dessert wine. It's a very remarkable cheese. And this one here is only 3 months old. We can hold that in our maturation room up to about 9 to 12 months. And what happens there, it develops a lot more nutty flavors. And being at that 3-month-old age, it's very grassy still. So it still has on your tongue all those beautiful front flavors, which is all about the characters of the milk. As that cheese ages and loses water content as it ages, that flavor would then go to the middle of your tongue. And then at about 12 months or more, go towards the back of your tongue. It would lose all those beautiful nuances that you experience, but then goes back to the nuttiness there, the umami flavors. And that's what happens when you age cheese properly up to those months. You wouldn't hold it any more than 12 months. It's curd formation when they cut the curds are too big to be able to do it. If you were to make a Parmesan style cheese, when you're cutting your curds in the vat, you cut them to almost like a little pinky nail size, and that draws moisture. When you age cheese, you want to draw as much moisture out of the curd as you can to allow it to further there. So yeah, this is a great, it's one of those, it's like almost like an English territorial cheese where you can graze on it all day. Like that cheese before it, the Femia, that's a great cheese for after dinner when you've got the heavier reds on the table. Perfect winter night cheese. This cheese here, the Banksia, that's a perfect sort of, you know, the best all-round cheese there that you can just eat all day and not feel full. It fills your mouth with flavor, but it doesn't fill your stomach in terms of fullness there.
What's the best way to cut it? Like, would it be like the thin slices, or would it be like thick pieces?
So I'm just dropping all my cheese all over my carpet. Really thin lengthways.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Don't cut your cheese in cubes. Cut it lengthways and thin. like when you cut salami and prosciutto, etc., you never cut it into blocks. Cut it thin to release and break up all the amino acid crystals, which release all the flavors there. Alrighty, the most underrated cheese around in Australia. Oh, Jesus. Most underrated. That's a good question. Yeah, underrated.
Silver Wattle.
Yeah, the silver wattle, because it's brand new. Like of this selection, that's the most underrated cheese. But in terms of all Australian cheeses, the most underrated would be yeah, we'll come back to that. Let's keep talking about these, and then it'll hit me. That was a good question. And storage tips for cheese: baking paper and then foil. Don't rewrap it in Glad wrap because they've been left out at room temp. When you wrap them in Glad wrap, they're just going to keep sweating and keep losing. And I'll tell you privately. Yeah.
Would you do it? Would you do baking paper and then in an airtight container?
Yeah, airtight container, then into the vegetable crisper.
Would you do it separately?
Always wrap cheese separately. Never wrap cheese
No,
separately.
as in like all in different containers.
No.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. You do that, you'll fill your fridge up tonight with containers.
I'll just put it all in, but that's good to know.
Alrighty, that brings us to the Mafra Clothbound Cheddar. They've been making this cheese for a long time. Pretty much when I started in cheese back in 2003, I'm going to say 2003-4. Mafra Clothbound Cheddar was that, and Pie and Garner Cheddar were the only two clothbound cheeses made in our country. And it's just your all-round great cheddar. Guess what?
This one's got like quite a bit of like crystallization.
Yep. So cheddar, when made properly, it's all about the acid. So it's got a really great initial acid flavor. It's toothsome, so it's that sort of breakable texture that coats your teeth. And then it's got the flavors through the middle and sides of your palate. When you look at bulk processed cheddars, like vintages, clubs, etc., they're all about bites, spice in the tongue, rip your roof of your mouth off. You need a heavy Shiraz to pair it. They're faults in cheese making that long ago, during the World War era, where we had to make one standardized cheese and we made that particular cheese, that worked well back then. And then the marketing firms behind those big cheeses like Bega and the one that changed its name, they use those to create things like vintage cheddar, club cheddar, etc. And they market it on those big big bitter notes, big bite notes, proper cloth-bound cheddar where the cheese breathes but also absorbs the lard that it's wrapped in before being cloth-bound. It's always known for its initial acid flavor, really moorish, almost meaty flavors through the mouth, and then finishes long. It shouldn't be bitey or bitter there. And when you taste an English version of this cheese, like a Montgomery's cheddar, a Westcombe cheddar, a Keen's, Quicks or Cabot from America, they got the same thing. Initial acid followed by beautiful moorish flavors, hint of vegetable notes. And that Mafra cheddars, it's a great melting cheese too. Really good toasty cheese as well. Like if you were to do Mafra cheddar and that Banksia, and so say you got 4 people at home, you get 200 grams of Banksia, 200 grams of Mafra cheddar. You get 1 leek, chop that up very finely, mix it with the 400 grams of grated cheese, put that in the middle of 2 buttered loaves, slices of bread into your toasty breast. You got a beautiful toasty right there. And then, yeah, so that's the cheddar. Works well.
It's very moorish.
Yeah, it's subtle without being too mild. Like there's still hints of flavor there that keep you interested and going through that whole cheese there. So Mafra is also a great great success story in our country in Gippsland. Like a lot of Gippsland cheesemakers, they've turned to Asia and they've introduced the Chinese to Australian cheese, and it's been absolutely fantastic for them and a lot of Gippsland cheesemakers, and it's really encouraging seeing that there. The best region to tour for Victorian cheeses, definitely, go to the mill at Castlemaine to see Long Paddock. Gippsland, there's a Prom Country, which do sheep's milk cheeses. There's Gippsland cheese. There's Mafra there as well. You can visit their farm gates. You can also visit Berries Creek there in Gippsland, or even going up to High Country and going to Millawa, and then visiting the wine region there in the High Country, and then spending a night in Beechworth or Bright and having some fantastic dinners there. Would be incredible. Or even keep going further up to Royal Mail and Dunkeld.
Royal Mail, I love that place.
Yeah. All right. So that brings us to the last of the, I guess, traditional cheeses. So Shadows of Blue. So Shadows of Blue was invented by a gentleman named Richard Thomas in the late 80s, early 90s. Now, Richard Thomas is the godfather of Australian cheese. He helped set up pretty much most of the dairies in Victoria, including Meredith. He created the recipe for Meredith marinated cheese. He created Yarra Valley Dairy and set up their Persian feta. And he also helped set up the Gippsland Dairy. And Shadows of Blue was his ode to Gorgonzola Dolce. If you ever meet Richard Thomas at an event, he'll always tell you about his most favorite experience of cheese was eating fresh Gorgonzola or freshly cut Gorgonzola there up in the mountains of Lombardy. I'll give you the PG version of that, but that's his favorite experience. And this cheese was an ode to that experience. And Shadows of Blue, it's almost like a blue brie where it develops the breakdown of the curd of the cheese. So you get this incredibly rich, creamy texture, and then they gently spike it because blue mold needs oxidization. Without oxidization, blue mold doesn't form. Like sometimes you see when you leave your cheese in the fridge too long, you get little spots of blue on the outside of it. That's blue mold that grows in the interior of these cheeses. So when you see it on your outside cheese, that means your fridge is too dry, and you can just shave those bits of blue mold off your cheese and still enjoy it. But they control the environment in blue. They introduce penicillins like Roquefort and glaucum into the cheese, and then they aerate it with little metal pricks. They do this one horizontally through the side of it, and then they leave that in the maturation room for about a week or two to grow blue mold, and then they wax it and put it in a cold fridge there. But this one's all about the gentle, lactic, sweet, savory, sort of acid.
I love that smell. Like, I know it's weird, but it's like an old cupboard. Like, that sort of like, it's the mold, isn't it? Like, it's that sort of like old. Yeah.
Now, in this particular portion of this cheese, the interior, the firmer bits, really sweet, etc. The broken down gooey bits, you're going to experience a big note of bitterness with the spice of blue. And that's just what happens sometimes with blue cheeses.
Musky. That's it.
Very musky, exactly. Yeah, great. Yeah. You need something sweet with this cheese. So
yeah, I'm having it with a little crisp bread with some cranberries and fruit in it, and it works perfectly.
I just want to say I agree with Samuel.
What does Samuel say? He smells like the cow tenant.
Again, I can't reinforce the point enough. Don't wrap your cheese in Glad wrap when you get home. Unwrap it, wrap it in paper and foil, because that cheese, the reason why it had that cow tent aroma, it's because it's been suffocating in its own wrap. It needs to come out of that baking paper, foil into the fridge. Cheeses are living organisms like us. For an experiment at home, wrap your partner, your child in Glad wrap, leave them for a day. They look beautiful. Their skin's shining. Their lips are plump. It looks like
they might be dead.
But they're dead because they suffocated. That's what happens to cheese. Cheese is a living organism. It needs to breathe. So when you do buy your cheese, If you can't buy from a dedicated cheese shop that cuts to wrap and you see that it's pre-cut, ask them when it was cut. If it was cut the day or the day before, that's fine. Take it home, unwrap it straight away, baking paper, foil, and you still got a beautiful cheese. If it's been there too long, a week or so, you're going to get that flavor close to the rind where it's really, really bitter and really unpleasant there. Because this cheese should be very gentle, very sweet. It should celebrate everything about shadows of blue there in Gippsland.
Now, what wine would you have with this, do you reckon?
Okay, so with every other style of cheese, it's all about weight of flavor matching and marrying. So front of palate, something with front of palate. With blue, it's the exact opposite. So blue's spicy, hint of salt from the blue vein. You need to contrast it with something sweet, something like a fortified, a botrytis style of wine. You can do a Sauternes, late harvest Riesling. Every now and then you see an ice wine. Anything that's high alcohol, high sweet flavors work extremely well with blue cheese. It just marries really well. Things like honey, fresh honeycomb, fresh figs, anything like that sweet nature. Dark chocolate, 70% nature or above, works extremely well with blue cheeses there. And the spice of the blue contrasts perfectly. And when you've got people who aren't too sure about blue, they work really, really well. Really good contrast.
Yeah, I like that one. That's good.
Yeah. And even if it's an aged red wine that's developed sweet notes to it and it's got zero tannin or minimal bitterness, perfect. Like if you've been cellaring something for good 10, 20, 30 years and it's lost its high tannins, its high bitterness at the back, and it won't clash with those blue flavors, then definitely by all means pair that. Because pairing like a heavy Shiraz after dinner, like a lot of people for so long would always come up to your cheese counter and go, I've got a beautiful Shiraz after dinner. Give me your spiciest blue. It's like, well, do you go to an oyster bar and go, give me a dozen oysters because I've got a very heavy Shiraz? No, because it's like metallic foil.
Yeah, it clashes.
It clashes, yeah.
We have a question about the baking paper, you know, why it doesn't sweat. And I think it's because the baking paper obviously also absorbs moisture. So but
it also it creates an air pocket. Like plastic seals to the skin, so there's no
and creates condensation in it.
Baking paper is porous and it still allows to breathe. And then the foil, it creates like a little micro chamber for the cheese. So it's like if I were to put an astronaut helmet on my head, there's that little bit of air around my head that allows me to keep breathing and keep operating. Yeah. All right, so that brings us to the labnehs. So these labnehs are both made here in Victoria. And making labneh is a very fun thing to do at home. So you just go to Essential Ingredient there at Prahran Market, pick up some muslin cloth, get your favorite live yogurt.
Or you can use chucks.
Chucks. Yep, either chucks or muslin. Get your yogurt, a little bit of salt, a little bit of lemon juice, mix that together, tie it in your chucks or your muslin, hang it in your fridge if you've got room, put a little bowl underneath it and leave it there for a day or two. The liquid whey is extracted. Then you've got the concentrated yogurt that's become labneh. And that's what you've got in front of you here is these two guys. You've got the one with sumac.
Don't throw the whey away.
They both have the whey away.
Don't throw the whey away.
No, don't throw the whey. I thought you were trying to make a pun there. Sorry.
No,
half glass of wine gone to my head.
You can actually use that in a lot of different things. You can.
What would you use the whey for?
I've done caramel with it.
Very nice.
I've done whey caramel, and it's got that sort of like tang.
Yep.
Which is so nice in like a salted caramel, and you get that sort of like slight tang that comes in, which is really good. You can use it in like broths or like smoothies even. Yeah,
it's got a very good protein content. You can also marinate chicken in it. If you have enough whey, you can leave your chicken in the whey before cooking it. It helps crisp up the skin. Yeah, and make the interior quite moist and tender there. But yeah, so what we have here is two traditional styles of Middle Eastern labneh, which are great at breakfast with some flatbread or pita bread. Great for afternoon snacks with some roasted or pickled vegetables. You could do roasted capsicum, zucchini, What else would you do, Di? If you were to do like an antipasto or a tapas style selection with these lavenders, what would you do?
I mean, yeah, you mentioned like obviously you can do. I think you can do. You can almost treat it like sweet or savory, really.
Yeah.
Lavender is very versatile. You can even have it for like your breakfast. So in terms of like, switch it up like how you would use yogurt.
Yeah, 100%.
I'd say
The one with this one with za'atar, I'll definitely do sweet, like with a little bit of orange blossom or rose water. The one with the herbal za'atar, that's definitely the savory.
I think you can use it in like how you would a burrata, even like have it with like your tomatoes, red onion and cucumber, and then pop that on top and mix that through with a little bit more olive oil and extra za'atar. I think that's amazing. You can have the sweet one with I think even pancakes, it'll go really well, or waffles.
Yeah, 100%.
Or pomegranate molasses.
I better say pomegranate molasses and citrus oil, like the citrus infused olive oils with that would be phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. There. And introducing kids to lavender is a great way to then introduce them to different cheeses, because it's a gateway cheese. Being essentially just strained yogurt, it's never going to have stronger flavors that are too out there for a child's palate, and it's a great healthy snack there. It's got bacteria that are live cultures for our guts, plus the protein of the milk, the minerals, and the vitamins.
And I think what's really good as well, you can put like nuts and fruits in this.
Yeah.
You can almost make it like almost like a little like a dessert, like just
100%.
Like
100%.
Yeah.
There was a good question about za'atar. Za'atar is like lemon thyme. It's always going to have that hint of citrus. Same with the sumac. Sumac and za'atar, beautiful Middle Eastern.
Sesame, sumac, and
even Aleppo pepper. Like Aleppo pepper is a great pairing with those two. It's also got that hint of citrus notes, and it's got the flavor of chili without being spicy. Yeah. Alrighty. That brings us to the penultimate and the ultimate, I guess, cheeses there, which are the dips from the famous Nahida's dip deli, or choice deli, sorry. They love their dips. The bomb's always a favorite, that they combine the two different dips, and they've given us two of the very popular dips there, the Warrnambool cheddar with the black pepper and jalapeno. That's a great one to be watching a footy with. There, you'd be doing that with a crisp pale ale or a pilsner. You wouldn't really do a wine with that there, because it strip all the flavors of the wine there. So just something of a lighter style of beer there. Do you want to taste that one, Di, and tell us what you think?
Which one? So we're going with the jalapeno one?
Yeah, we're going with the cheddar one first.
Definitely a little bit of kick with that. It's got you can definitely taste the pepper, so it's spicy. You can also taste the jalapenos. It's very strong, this one, I would say. So something that would pair really well with this in terms of food, I would say something like cornbread, or where it's got like that slight sweetness. So anything like something sweet, like a pumpkin roll, or like
those pumpkin rolls that you made, that recipe.
I think that would go perfectly.
That would go really well.
Yeah, like something that's like a milky bun, I would say would go really well with this, because it's got that subtle sweetness, but it doesn't overpower, because this is a very, very strong dip.
Yeah, and building on that milk bun, you could go to Gary's Meats, get that pastrami he makes, that Wagyu one from Cape Grim. Get that with this as your cheese spread, with that pastrami and a tomato, a little bit of watercress on that milk bun. That would be amazing.
Yeah, it's strong. It's definitely you can definitely taste the pepper in there and the jalapeno as well. It's pretty.
A lot of pepper.
It's loaded. If
There was that much pepper.
pepper, you probably won't be a fan of this, but
It took the hair off my head.
it's not chili, it's pepper.
Yeah.
I mean, jalapeno is a little bit spicy.
Yeah.
And also I think something quite sour would go quite well with this as well. So because it's super creamy. Something acidic like pickles would go well with this.
100%.
Yeah.
Like this is a great party dip. Like if I've got people coming around to watch, like recently the AFL Grand Final, the NFL Grand Final, the races coming up, whatever it may be, like having that as your dip would be quite good there with those marinated
Doritos.
Yeah, 100%. Doritos, corn, like you said, corn, the cornbread, corn chips.
I think corn goes well. Anything sweet or sour will go well with this dip.
Yeah.
The goat curd and truffle one.
Now the recipe for the pumpkin rolls, they're on your Instagram, aren't they?
Yeah, they are on my Instagram.
Beautiful.
It's a little bit of a process, but make sure you make a big batch because it's definitely worth it. We had them in the freezer, and they freeze really well as well. We ate them, weeks after, and it still came out beautifully. Pop them in the microwave for a minute and a half, and it comes back to life. Now the truffle.
The final one is the goat's curd with the summer truffle through it there.
Super salty, really, really strong as well. So these two are very strong. Honey. Yeah, definitely need something like sweet, like honey with this one to counter it.
You could make it your own. You could get fresh goat's curd. You could get olive tapenade. And so if you're doing, you do 5% or 10% of it as olive tapenade, mix that through the goat's curd, and then shave the fresh truffle on top there.
This, do you reckon it's whipped as well? Like, is there cream in here?
100%. There's cream cheese in that. You can feel the viscosity. That's not a problem.
It's super smooth. It's almost like, it's actually almost it's spreadable.
Yeah.
Like, when you have like a sandwich or something.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, they do a great job with their dips there. And I love seeing people using cheese in a culinary way. Like cheese doesn't just have to be a block on a cheese platter. You can do cooking with it, or like nahitas do with a dip, and they're both great in their own right. Both those dips there. And
it's a little bit of fun, like when you have your little like gathering at home, little picnics. I think these are quite easy, to take along and
100%.
Still a lot of flavor.
Yeah, and I'd definitely with these dips, I would be that first one. I'd be putting pickled jalapenos through that as well. So I would add to that and put those there. And then definitely with that second one, a little bit of lemon zest. Just on top, and a little bit of fresh honey drizzled, and away you go. That would be absolutely beautiful. Beautiful cheese concept dishes there. And and when you have cheese at home, there's no real right or wrong. It's all about what you love in flavor and taste.
And seasonal, I think.
And seasonal. Yeah, so coming into spring for local cheesemakers, a couple of the ones that we didn't feature tonight, Holy Goat, for example, they're a great one to be experiencing now, because now that we're in October and we're starting to see the goats feeding on that first growing of grass of spring. So there's a lot more flowers in the grass. There's a lot sweeter milk. Dreaming Goat, if you can find them. We do have them. They're a yogurt and a labneh and a marinated cheese. Again, it's that first growing of grass. The long paddock cheeses that we're starting to see, they're all coming from the start of spring. Miller's cheeses, the camemberts, that goat's camembert was made start of September when it was that first growing of the grass. Another great cheese maker we didn't see tonight, which is Berries Creek. They make Australia's best blue cheeses. Like think Tarwin blue, if you see that. Snap it up. It's a beautiful beautiful cow's milk blue. Riverine, it's an amazing buffalo milk blue. That for me is Australia's best blue cheese. If you can see Riverine, do taste it and buy it. It's a great introductory blue. Beautiful raw milk almond, sort of raw almond flavors of the milk. followed by a very gentle spice of the blue. Another great cheese maker, again, is a couple of them from Gippsland. So the Genting's Red, it's been around forever, and it's making a beautiful comeback with the new cheesemakers on board, making fantastic wash rind cheese. Miller's King River Gold, great bastion of wash rind cheeses there. Like Victoria is definitely leading the way with cheese making. For a while it was Tasmania, then New South Wales, but now Victoria. And with the long paddock there, setting up a dairy school in Castlemaine, honestly, in the next 5 years, we can see some incredible cheese being made if they do go through that school. And then raw milk cheese, we're allowed to make raw milk. It's just giving our cheesemakers more confidence and education to be able to go down that path there. So fantastic time to be enjoying cheese in our country, most definitely there. And if there are any questions, do shoot them through. But I do want to recommend, if you're traveling again and you do head to Paris, head to Boulevard Saint-Germain, go to Boulevard Saint-Germain, and his name is, oh Jesus, it's my favorite cheese shop in the world, and I've forgotten his name.
In the world?
For me, it's the favorite cheese shop. Laurent Dubois, D-U-B-O-I-S, Laurent Dubois. It's, for me, what he does with cheese is fantastic. Then you've got, of course, Hervé Mons there in the Lyon food market is amazing. If you head to Milan, head to Pex. If you go to Piemonte, go to Slow Food, the Presider there, the Italy. If you're ever in New York, head to the Chelsea food market. There's a great cheese shop there.
I think you need to write this down and post it.
Definitely. And then London, of course, Neil's Yard Dairy at the Borough Market is phenomenal.
And that's where you started.
Yeah, and I just want to thank all the traders from the delis, from Chazzo's, Nahida's, Pete and Rosie's, Food House Deli, the Cheese Shop Deli as well, for being involved tonight and supplying the cheese. It was no easy feat, trust me. We all had to cut 200 portions of all of our cheeses there, and then the Pran Market and the marketing team there for the logistics behind this. That was phenomenal to get everything sent out in this great condition that we received it in tonight. And I hope you all had a great experience. And again, Di, thank you as well for giving up your time to join me tonight. I'm sorry I spoke more than you.
No. I mean, you're the expert here, so I'm more than happy to. I gave my 2 cents worth, but it's good nonetheless. Obviously, chatting with you once again. Anthony and I know each other very well, and if circumstances were different, we'd probably be doing this together in person, which would be a little bit more fun. But hopefully, we can do that very soon.
Yeah, and most importantly, thank you all for joining us too. And if you do have any questions, do reach out. I'm at Maker and Munger on Instagram. Do drop us a message or a comment on one of our photos if you've got any questions about tonight's cheeses. Or come into the shop. We offer you a tasting of all of our cheeses there, and we've got some fantastic products coming in.
And not just cheeses, really good wines as well. So like the wines we had tonight are from
both that. If you experience that Pinot and that Sauvignon Blanc tonight, they're from our shop. We've got an incredible gentleman, Gareth Burnett, who's done our wine list for us, and and honestly, some of the traders in the market. We've got the bearded bakers, the bearded boys. They're doing that canef, that beautiful, that's it. That dessert cheese, they're there at the market this weekend.
They're doing a pop-up, aren't they?
Yeah, they're doing a pop-up. Joey with the big beard. He's doing a pop-up. So
Thanks very much, Diana, and thanks, Anthony. And thank you to all the participants. There will be a recording that comes out for everybody over the next 24 hours. And thanks for your time tonight.
Have a good night. Have a good weekend. Bye.